Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was suspended from EA. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The rain in Muzidafu didn't wash things clean. It just made everything heavier. It turned the dust of construction sites into sludge and slicked the asphalt with an oily sheen that reflected the neon chaos of the city. Izuku Midoriya adjusted the grip on his gloves, feeling the dampness seeping through the fabric. He was currently stationed on the corner of 4th and Main, crouched atop a gargoyle extending from an old pre-Quark-era office building. His costume, usually a symbol of hope and brightness, felt sodden and weighed down. He was on a provisional patrol rotation. With the work-study program in full swing post-joint training, the Hero Public Safety Commission had authorized students to fill gaps in patrol routes usually manned by lower-ranked pros. Today, Izuku was shadowing Death Arms, the pro-hero, a man whose quirk granted him immense strength but lacked the flashy mobility of the top 10, was standing on the street corner below, his arms crossed, glaring at a vending machine as if it had offended his ancestors. Midoriya, Death Arms' voice crackled over the comms earpiece. Stop fidgeting. You're vibrating the gargoyle. I can see the water shaking off it from down here. Sorry, sir. Izuku squeaked, immediately freezing. He hadn't realized he was doing it. I was just keeping the engines warm. Metaphorically. And physically. Full cowling helps regulate body temperature, so quiet on the comms unless it's a status report, Death Arms grunted. This is a low-risk sector. We're just showing the flag. Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. That was impossible. Izuku's mind was a web of anxiety and analysis. Since the joint training session with Class 1B, and the terrifying, uncontrollable manifestation of Black Whip, he felt like he was walking on a tightrope. He had a new power he couldn't use, a legacy that was getting heavier by the day, and a constant, nagging fear that he wasn't moving fast enough. All Might is running out of time, Izuku thought, staring at his gloved hands. Shigaraki is out there. The League is planning something. I can't be standing still. The rain picked up. Thunder rumbled, low and threatening, shaking the glass of the skyscraper behind him. Then, the explosion happened. It wasn't a fire-based blast. It was a concussive wave of pure pressure. 3 blocks down, the front of the Kawasaki Trust Bank blew outward, showering the wet street with glass and pulverized concrete. Code Red. Death Arms roared, already sprinting toward the smoke. Midoriya, establish a perimeter. Do not engage until we assess the threat level. Roger. Izuku yelled, leaping from the gargoyle. Green lightning crackled around his body. One for all, full cowling 8%. He hit the wet pavement and skated forward, his iron saws carving through the water. He overtook Death Arms in seconds, a blur of green and teal. Assess the threat. Establish perimeter. Evacuate civilians. As Izuku skidded to a halt in front of the bank, the dust cleared to reveal the villain. He was massive, easily standing 8 feet tall. His skin looked like polished obsidian, rippling with a strange, liquid energy. He wore a torn prison jumpsuit, and his chest heaved with manic laughter. He held a massive safe under one arm like a football. Finally! The villain bellowed. His voice sounded like grinding stones. Some fresh air. Villain! Izuku shouted, assuming a combat stance. Put the safe down and surrender. The villain looked down at him. A kid? They sent a kid? I tear through the vault of the Kawasaki Trust, and the best the heroes have is a green bean. Midoriya! Death Arms arrived, panting slightly. He slammed his fists together. Back up. That's Rebound. He's a B-rank heavy hitter. Escaped convoy transport 2 days ago. His quirk reflects kinetic energy. Do not hit him directly. Reflects kinetic energy, Izuku's mind raced. If I punch him, the force comes back to me. A counter-type. Similar to Wobbuffet mechanics, or maybe Fat Gum's absorption but with instant redirection. We need Eraserhead or a containment foam unit, Death Arms commanded, pressing his hand to his ear. Dispatch, we have Rebound at Sector 4. Requesting specialized backup. Do not send physical types. Boring! Rebound roared. He stomped his foot. The pavement didn't just crack, it rippled. A shockwave tore through the asphalt, flipping cars like toys. "Look out!" Izuku screamed. He grabbed a bystander, a woman paralyzed by fear, and leaped backward as a delivery truck tumbled through the space where she had been standing. Izuku landed on a lamppost, depositing the woman on a second-story balcony. "Nice save, kid!" Rebound laughed. "But can you catch this?" The villain grabbed a compact car and hurled it. Not at Izuku. At the support pillar of the monorail track running directly above the intersection. Crack! The concrete pillar shattered. The steel groaned. The track above, currently carrying a rush-hour train, sagged dangerously. Sparks showered down as the electric rails snapped. "The train!" Izuku gasped. "Midoriya, don't!" Death Arms shouted, bracing himself under a falling chunk of debris. "Cementos is 3 minutes out. We just need to stabilize the area. 3 minutes is too long. The structure is failing now." Izuku looked up. The train was screeching to a halt, but the track was tilting. If it tipped, the train would plummet onto the crowded intersection below. Hundreds of people were scattering, screaming, tripping over each other in the rain. "I can't wait. I have to act, one for all," Izuku muttered. He didn't listen to Death Arms. He didn't think about the villain's specific counter-affinity. He only saw the people in danger. Izuku launched himself off the lamppost. He wasn't aiming for the train, he was aiming for Rebound. "If I knock him out, I can stop him from destroying the other pillars." Smash! Izuku yelled, driving a heel drop down onto the villain's shoulder. He pulled his punch at the last second, fearing the reflection, but even 8% was a lot of force. Rebound didn't even flinch. His skin rippled, turning the impact purple, and then flashed white. Boom! Izuku was blasted backward as if he'd been shot out of a cannon. He tumbled through the air, crashing through a bus stop shelter. Pain exploded in his leg. "I told you, kid!" Rebound cackled. "The harder you hit, the harder you fall. Now, let's bring the house down." Rebound turned and punched the second support pillar. The groan of the metal overhead turned into a scream. The monorail track snapped completely. The train, heavy with passengers, began to slide off the rails, tipping toward the street. Everything seemed to move in slow motion. Izuku lay in the shattered glass of the bus stop. He saw Death Arms struggling to hold up a falling slab of concrete, unable to reach the train. He saw the faces of the people in the windows of the falling carriage. "I failed. I attacked him and it did nothing. I wasted time." Panic, cold and sharp, seized his heart. The logic of the battlefield vanished, replaced by the desperate, primal need to save. Think. Black Whip? It's too unruly. I can't control it for a catch that heavy. Air Force? Not enough pressure. He needed power. Raw, undeniable power. He needed to generate enough wind pressure to cushion the train's fall and simultaneously blast Rebound away so he couldn't finish the job. But his body couldn't handle 100%. He knew that. He had broken himself over and over again. But if I don't do it, they die. The equation was simple to Izuku. His limbs versus their lives. It wasn't even a choice. Izuku grit his teeth, forcing himself up. The lightning around him changed from a soft green to a violent, blinding white. The rain around him vaporized instantly from the sheer heat of the energy pouring out of him. "Midoriya, no!" Death Arms screamed, seeing the boy lighting up like a supernova. Izuku ignored him. He ignored the screaming of his own muscles. He ignored the lesson Aizawa had tried to drill into him since day one. He cocked his right arm back. He channeled everything he had, not into a focused strike, but a desperate, wide-area blast. One for all, 100%. He felt the bones in his right arm grind together even before he threw the punch. The power was too much. The vessel was still too small. Delaware-Detroit smash. He flicked his fingers and swung his arm in an uppercut motion simultaneously. The world went white. The sound was deafening. It wasn't a whoosh. It was a thunderclap that shattered every window within a 4-block radius. The air pressure blast slammed into the falling train, acting as a massive, violent cushion. It arrested the train's fall, pinning it against the side of a skyscraper, while the remaining force vectored downward, hitting Rebound. Rebound's quirk could reflect kinetic energy, but every quirk had a limit. The sheer volume of atmospheric pressure overwhelmed his absorption. He was driven into the pavement, buried 10 feet deep in a crater of his own making. But the cost. The shockwave didn't stop at the villain. It tore through the street. Storefronts were ripped open. Cars were blown sideways into buildings, the glass falling from the skyscrapers, shattered by Izuku's air pressure, rained down like jagged daggers on the civilians below. And Izuku? Izuku heard a sound like a dry branch snapping, magnified 1,000 times. He was thrown backward by the recoil of his own attack. He slammed into the brick wall of an alleyway, sliding down into a heap of wet trash bags. Silence returned to the street, save for the wailing of car alarms and the terrified sobbing of the survivors. Izuku lay in the alley. His right arm was twisted at a sickening angle, the sleeve of his costume shredded. His fingers were purple. The pain was so intense it felt like numbness. He looked up, vision blurring. The train was safe. It was wedged between two buildings, precarious, but held. Rebound was unconscious in the crater. I did it. Izuku whispered, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. All Might. Darkness clawed at the edges of his vision. He heard heavy footsteps splashing toward him. You idiot! Death Arm's voice was blurry, distorted. You absolute reckless idiot! Izuku smiled weakly, thinking it was praise for the save, before his eyes rolled back and he slumped into the unconsciousness that waited for him. The smell of antiseptic was the first thing to return. Izuku blinked his eyes open. The stark white ceiling of a hospital room greeted him. Not the UA infirmary. This was a regular hospital. The lights were too bright, humming with a frequency that made his headache worse. He tried to sit up, but a wave of nausea pushed him back down. He looked to his right. His arm was encased in a heavy, sophisticated cast, elevated in a sling. He could feel the throb of the bone deep inside, a rhythmic reminder of his action. You're awake. The voice was dry, tired, and devoid of its usual warmth. Izuku turned his head. Recovery Girl was sitting in a chair by the window, her hands resting on her cane. Next to her stood Eraserhead. Aizawa looked terrifying. Usually, when Aizawa was angry, his hair floated, and his eyes glowed red. He shouted. He used his capture tape. Today, he was just standing there. His hands were in his pockets. His scarf hung limp. His eyes were dark, baggy, and fixed on Izuku with an expression that wasn't anger. It was disappointment. Deep, crushing disappointment. Recover Girl, Izuku rasped, his throat dry. My arm, could you? No, the old woman said sharply. Izuku flinched. What? I said no, sonny. Recovery Girl stood up slowly, her joints popping. She looked at him with sad eyes. I have healed you time and time again. I have warned you. I told you after the sports festival. I told you after the camp. I told you that there is a limit to what a body can take, and a limit to what I am willing to fix. But I have to get back to training, Izuku pleaded, panic rising. The work study. You shattered your radius and ulna into powder, Midoriya, Recovery Girl said, her voice trembling slightly. You tore the ligaments in your shoulder. If I use my quirk on you right now, to speed up that level of tissue regeneration, it will sap so much of your stamina that it might actually kill you in your current state. And even if it didn't, I am refusing treatment. Refusing? Izuku felt cold. I am a doctor, not a mechanic for a broken machine, she said firmly. I will not enable your self-destruction anymore. You will heal the natural way. You will sit in this bed, you will feel the pain, and you will think about why you are here. She turned to Aizawa. He's all yours, Shota. I can't look at him right now. The small woman walked out of the room, the tap-tap-tap of her cane echoing like gunshots in the silence. Izuku swallowed hard. He looked at Aizawa. Sensei, the villain was going to drop the train. I had to. You panicked, Aizawa cut him off. His voice was low, lethal. I saved them. Izuku protested, sitting up despite the pain. Nobody died. The train was caught. Aizawa pulled a remote from his pocket and clicked the television on the wall. It was tuned to a news channel. Aerial footage showed the intersection. It looked like a war zone. The villain, Rebound, is in custody, the news anchor was saying. However, the excessive force used to apprehend him has resulted in significant controversy. The shockwave generated by the UA student shattered windows for 3 blocks. Over 40 civilians have been admitted to local hospitals with lacerations from falling glass. The structural integrity of the Kawasaki Trust building is compromised. Estimated damages are upwards of 600 million yen. The screen changed to a video taken by a bystander. It showed a mother shielding her child as glass rained down, screaming. It wasn't a scream of fear of the villain. It was fear of the shockwave. Aizawa clicked the TV off. You saved the people on the train, Aizawa said quietly. And you hospitalized 40 people on the ground. You destroyed a city block. I didn't have a choice, Izuku whispered, tears forming in his eyes. If I didn't use 100%, the train would have fallen. There is always a choice. Aizawa stepped closer to the bed. You had death arms there. You had communication channels open. You could have used Black Whip to stabilize the track supports rather than trying to punch the air itself. You could have targeted the villain's footing. But you didn't think. You saw a problem, and you threw yourself at it like a suicide bomber. Aizawa leaned down, his face inches from Izuku's. Let me ask you something, Midoriya. If you had missed, if your body had given out 1 second before you launched that attack, what would have happened? I would have died, Izuku admitted. And the train? It would have fallen. Exactly, Aizawa straightened up. You bet the lives of everyone on that train, and everyone on the street, on a gamble that you could survive breaking your own body. Again, Izuku looked down at his cast. I just wanted to save them. I know, Aizawa sighed, and for a moment, he looked incredibly weary. That is your greatest virtue. And it is your fatal flaw. You don't value yourself. You think of yourself as a vessel for that quirk, as a tool to be broken and discarded as long as the job gets done. You think martyrdom is heroism. Aizawa walked to the door. Get dressed, Midoriya. Your mother is bringing clothes. You're being discharged. Discharged? So I can go back to the dorms? Aizawa didn't look back. We're going to see the principal. The drive to Yui was silent. Inko Midoriya sat in the back seat with Izuku, holding his good hand. She had been crying earlier, her eyes red and puffy. Now, she just squeezed his hand every time the car went over a bump, as if trying to transfer her own strength into him. Izuku stared out the window. The rain had stopped, but the world still looked gray. When they arrived at UA, they didn't go to the Heights Alliance dorms. They went straight to the main administrative building. Principal Nizu's office was usually a place of comfort, tea, chess, intelligent conversation. Today, it felt like a courtroom. Nizu sat behind his desk, paws clasped together. All Might was there, too. Izuku's heart leaped. All Might, but Toshinori Yagi didn't smile. He looked pale, skeletal, and deeply conflicted. He stood in the corner, leaning against the wall, refusing to meet Izuku's eyes. Sit down, Midoriya. Mrs. Midoriya, Nizu said pleasantly, though his beady eyes were sharp as razors. They sat. Aizawa stood by the door, acting as the bailiff. Izuku Midoriya, Nizu began, pouring a cup of tea but not offering it. We have reviewed the footage from your patrol today. We have the reports from Death Arms, the police, and the damage assessment team. I'm willing to take extra remedial classes, Izuku blurted out. I'll work off the damages. I know I messed up the power output, but you are suspended, Nizu said. The word hung in the air. Izuku blinked. As suspended? For how long? 3 days? A week? 1 month, Nizu said. A month? Izuku stood up, ignoring the pain in his arm. Principal Nizu, you can't? The curriculum moves too fast. If I miss a month, I'll fall behind. I need to master Black Whip, I need to. Sit down! Aizawa barked. Izuku collapsed back into the chair, stunned. This is not just about the damages, Midoriya, Nizu continued, his voice calm but unyielding. Though the damages are severe. This is about a pattern of behavior. Since the day you entered this school, you have solved problems by destroying yourself. Nizu gestured to All Might. We have enabled this, Nizu said. All Might, Aizawa, myself. We looked at your potential, your heart, and we looked the other way when you broke your bones. We said he is learning, but you aren't learning, are you? Not the lesson that matters. I am getting stronger. Izuku argued, desperate. I can use 20% now. I saved Eri. I saved Koda. And today, you almost left your mother childless, Nisa said softly. Izuku froze. He felt Inko stiffen beside him. Mrs. Midoriya, Nisa turned to her. Be honest with us. Every time your phone rings, do you fear it is the hospital calling to tell you Izuku is dead? Inko looked at her son. Her lip trembled. Tears spilled over again. Yes, she whispered. Every single day. The word hit Izuku harder than the villain's punch. Izuku, Nisa said. You cannot be the symbol of peace if you are dead. You cannot save anyone if you are a liability. Your provisional license is hereby suspended. You are banned from hero training. You are banned from the Yui dorms. No dorms? Izuku breathed. You are returning home to live with your mother for the duration of the suspension, Nisa declared. You need to remember what it is like to be a human being, not just a hero. You need to remember the people who love you, the people who you hurt when you throw your life away so cheaply. But All Might. Izuku looked at his mentor, pleading for intervention. Tell them. You know what it takes. You know I have to push past my limits. All Might finally looked up. His blue eyes were dim. Young Midoriya, All Might said, his voice raspy. I was a bad teacher. I taught you how to smash. I taught you how to smile. But I never taught you how to live. All Might clenched his fist. When I fought All for One, I was ready to die. I accepted it. And because of that, I lost my power. I left the world without its symbol. I don't want that for you. I don't want you to be me. But, it is decided. Aizawa stepped forward. Pack your bags, Midoriya. You're going home tonight. The walk to the dorms felt like a funeral procession. It was evening now. The common room of Heights Alliance was buzzing with activity. Class 1A was winding down. Ashido and Kaminari were fighting over a video game. Ida was scolding Mineta. Uraraka was reading on the couch. When the door opened and Aizawa walked in, followed by a bandaged, soaking wet Izuku and his mother, the room went dead silent. Midoriya? Uraraka stood up, concern etched on her face. Deku-kun? What happened? We saw the news. Is your arm okay? Ida rushed forward, chopping the air. We were worried when you didn't answer the group chat. Izuku couldn't look at them. The shame was a physical weight, pressing his chin to his chest. Midoriya is taking a leave of absence, Aizawa announced to the room. He is suspended for 1 month due to gross negligence and recklessness in the field. A collective gasp swept the room. Suspended? Kaminari dropped his controller. For real? That's harsh, sensei. Kirishima protested. He stopped the villain, didn't he? He almost killed himself and injured 40 civilians, Aizawa said coldly. He is leaving. Now. Izuku moved to the stairs like a robot. He could feel their eyes on him. Pity. Confusion. He packed his bag in a daze. His All Might poster seemed to mock him from the walls. Plus Ultra, they said. Go beyond. I went beyond, Izuku thought bitterly. And look where it got me. He grabbed a few changes of clothes, his notebooks, and his phone. He left his costume. He didn't deserve it right now. When he came back downstairs, the class was waiting. Bakugo was leaning against the wall near the door, arms crossed. His red eyes bore into Izuku. Izuku stopped in front of him. Kaken, you idiot, Bakugo growled. It wasn't his usual explosive screaming. It was a low, simmering anger. I watched the footage. You telegraphed that smash from a mile away. And you didn't check your corners. I know, Izuku whispered. You're trying to play catch-up, Bakugo scoffed, looking away. But you're just tripping over your own damn feet. Don't think this means I'm waiting for you. If you fall behind, I'm leaving you in the dust. I know, Izuku repeated. Deku-kun. Uraraka stepped forward, her eyes wet. We'll take notes for you. We'll come visit. No visitors, Aizawa cut in. This is a punishment, not a vacation. Complete isolation from UA activities. Uraraka looked stricken. Izuku forced a smile. It was brittle and fake, nothing like All Might's. I'll be fine, guys. Just Just keep getting stronger. I'll catch up. He walked out the door, into the cool night air. His mother's car was waiting. He put his bag in the trunk with his good arm. He got into the passenger seat. As the car pulled away, Izuku looked back at the imposing silhouette of UA High School. The fortress of heroes. The place where dreams were made. For the first time in a year, he was on the outside looking in. Izuku? His mother asked softly as she merged onto the highway. Are you hungry? I can make katsudon when we get home. Izuku looked down at his broken hand. He remembered the feeling of the bones snapping. He remembered the screams of the people cut by the glass he had shattered. I'm not hungry, Mom, he said quietly. He leaned his head against the cool glass of the window and closed his eyes. But sleep didn't come. Only the replay of the explosion, over and over again. He was grounded. In every sense of the word. And for the first time, Izuku Midoriya had no idea how to save himself. The distance between the UA administration building and the Heights Alliance dormitories was approximately 1.2 kilometers. Izuku Midoriya knew this because he had run it countless times during morning jogs, timing his splits, calculating his lung capacity, and analyzing his stride efficiency. It was a path of asphalt and manicured greenery that usually represented his road to the future. Tonight, sitting in the back of a campus shuttle bus ferrying him from Principal Nise's office back to the dorms to collect his belongings, that 1.2 kilometers felt like the length of a death row corridor. The shuttle hummed quietly. Beside him, Inko Midoriya stared at her hands, which were knotted together in her lap. She hadn't stopped trembling since Nise had delivered the verdict. Every few seconds she would glance at Izuku's cast, her eyes filling with fresh tears, before looking away, guilt warring with relief on her face. Izuku didn't speak. He couldn't. His throat felt like it had been packed with the same concrete dust that had coated his lungs hours ago. The painkillers Recovery Girl had prescribed, but not administered via quirk, were dulling the sharpest edges of the agony in his arm, but they did nothing for the hollow, cold sensation in his chest. Suspended. The word bounced around his skull, colliding with his thoughts like a pinball. 1 month. No hero training. No license. Go home. The shuttle hissed to a halt in front of the 1A dormitory. The building was glowing with warmth, the golden light spilling out from the common room windows onto the wet pavement. It looked like a home. It was his home. And he was being evicted. I'll wait here, Mrs. Midoriya, the driver said softly. I'll come help you pack, Izuku, Inko said, reaching for the door handle. No, Izuku said. His voice was hoarse, cracking in the middle. He cleared his throat and tried again, softer. No, Mom. Please. I need to do this part alone. I can't. If you're there, I'll fall apart. Just give me 20 minutes. Inko looked at him, her expression crumbling, but she nodded. She understood. She always understood too much. Okay. I'll wait here. Izuku stepped out of the shuttle. The night air was crisp, smelling of rain and ozone. He walked up the path to the front door. He reached for his student ID card to swipe the lock, then froze. Do I even have access anymore? His hand trembled as he tapped the card against the reader. Beep. The light turned green. He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. The system hadn't locked him out yet. He was still a student, technically. Just a suspended one. A failure. He pushed the door open. The common room was a hive of activity, a stark contrast to the storm inside Izuku's head. The television was blaring a variety show. Shiro and Kaminari were draped over the sofas, laughing at something on a phone screen. Jiro was tuning a guitar in the corner. Ashido was dancing to music only she could hear. The normalcy of it struck Izuku like a physical blow. This was the ecosystem he had fought so hard to be a part of. This was the sanctuary. The door clicked shut behind him. Shiro looked up first. Hey! The man of the hour returns. We saw the news, dude. That smash was... He stopped. The laughter died in Kaminari's throat. Jiro's hands stilled over the guitar strings. One by one, heads turned. They saw the heavy plaster cast strapped to Izuku's chest. They saw the dirt and grime still streaked across his face. But mostly, they saw his eyes. They were the eyes of someone who had lost. Deku-kun? Uraraka was the first to move. She had been studying at the kitchen table with Ida. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. You've been gone for hours. Is everything okay? Aizawa-sensei came back earlier, but he wouldn't say anything, just that you were with Niza. Izuku gripped the strap of his backpack with his good hand. He tried to summon the smile. The All Might smile, that's fine smile. But his facial muscles refused to cooperate. Izuku started, but his voice failed him. Ida marched forward, his movements stiff and urgent. Midoriya-kun, your injuries appear severe. Why hasn't Recovery Girl treated you? You should be resting in the infirmary, not standing here. She wouldn't treat me, Izuku whispered. The room went dead silent. Even Bakugo, who had been sulking in a chair by the window reading a manga, lowered his book. What do you mean she wouldn't treat you? Kirishima asked, standing up from the floor. That's not manly at all. You're hurt. I have to pack, Izuku said, sidestepping the question. He couldn't look them in the eye. He looked at the floorboards. I've been suspended. Suspended? The word rippled through the room. For the damages? Yayorosa asked, her hand covering her mouth. The news said the property damage was high, but surely insurance covers that. It was a villain attack. It wasn't just the damages, Izuku said, forcing himself to keep moving toward the elevator. It was everything. The recklessness. The injury. Niza said. Niza said I need to learn to value my life. He pressed the button for the elevator. He could feel the class staring at his back. He wanted the doors to open. He wanted to disappear. 1 month, Izuku added, staring at the digital numbers counting down. House arrest. No training. No license. A month? Uraraka gasped. She ran to him, grabbing his good arm. Deku-kun, that's not fair. You saved those people on the train. If you hadn't done that, they would have died, and I almost killed the people on the street, Izuku said softly. He finally looked at her. Her big, round eyes were swimming with tears. Uraraka-san. I hurt 40 people. Because I panicked. Because I wasn't strong enough to do it the right way. The elevator dinged. The doors slid open. I have to pack, he repeated. My mom is waiting outside. He stepped in and hit the button for the second floor. As the doors closed, he saw Ida holding Uraraka back, his face a mask of conflicted pain, and Todoroki standing silently in the back, his mismatched eyes wide with a dawning realization. His room was dark. He didn't turn on the main light, only the small desk lamp. It cast long, distorted shadows across the shrine of All Might. Everywhere he looked, the symbol of peace smiled back at him. All Might posing. All Might saving. All Might laughing in the face of danger. The room was a museum dedicated to the ideal Izuku had chased his entire life. I was a bad teacher, All Might had said in the office. Izuku grabbed a duffel bag from his closet. He tried to unzip it, fumbling with his left hand. Frustration welled up, hot and stinging. He yanked at the zipper with his teeth, tearing it open. He started throwing things in indiscriminately. School uniform. Casual clothes. Underwear. His notebooks, Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13, 14, 15. He hesitated holding Volume 15. The last entry was about Black Whip. About the potential. He shoved it into the bag. He went to his desk to grab his phone charger. His eyes landed on the picture frame sitting there. It was the photo from the training camp, before the villains attacked. The whole class smiling, covered in dirt, eating curry. He picked it up. He looked at his own face in the photo. He looked so happy. So eager. He looked at Koda, the boy he had shattered his arms to save. Was that wrong too? He wondered. If Aizawa had been there, would he have suspended me then? No, a voice in his head whispered. That was defense. Today was impatience. He wrapped the photo frame in a t-shirt and put it in the bag. He couldn't leave it here. He felt like if he left it, he wouldn't be coming back. He grabbed his toiletries. He grabbed his limited edition All Might hoodie. He looked at the Gamma suitcase in the corner. The costume Hatsum had worked so hard to upgrade. The iron soles? The bracers. He left it. He wasn't a hero right now. He was just Izuku. Zipping the bag was harder than opening it. He had to kneel on it, pressing it down with his knees, sweating from the exertion and the throbbing pain in his right arm. When it was finally closed, he sat on the floor for a moment, breathing heavily. The room felt different. With his personal items packed, it felt like a stranger's room. A shrine to a dead god, inhabited by a ghost. Knock, knock. Izuku stiffened. I'm coming, Mom. I'm almost done. It's not your mom. The voice was cool, monotone, and familiar. Izuku scrambled to his feet. Todoroki-kun? Shoto Todoroki stood in the doorway. He hadn't fully opened the door, just enough to lean against the frame. His face was unreadable, as usual, but there was a tension in his shoulders. Can I come in? I'm really in a rush, Todoroki-kun. Aizawa-sensei is waiting to drive me in. Todoroki stepped in anyway and closed the door. He looked around the room, his eyes scanning the All Might posters before landing on Izuku. You're really leaving? It's just a month, Izuku said, trying to sound optimistic. I'll study. I'll watch the footage. I'll come back better. My father causes property damage every time he fights, Todoroki said bluntly. He melts buildings. He incinerates cars. He has never been suspended. Izuku blinked. That's different. Endeavor is the #1 hero. He has control. He knows what he's doing, does he? Todoroki tilted his head. Or is it just that society accepts his collateral damage because his power is undeniable? He walked closer to Izuku. Aizawa isn't suspending you because you broke a building, Midoriya. We both know that. I know, Izuku looked down. It's because I broke myself. You have a martyr complex, Todoroki stated. It wasn't an insult. It was an observation, delivered with the same clinical detachment as a medical diagnosis. You think your value is tied to how much pain you can endure for others. I used to think my value was tied to rejecting my father's power. We are both idiots. Izuku let out a weak, wet chuckle. Yeah. Maybe. Todoroki reached into his pocket and pulled out a small container. It was a tube of high-quality burn ointment, the kind he used for his own training. For your arm, Todoroki said, placing it on the desk. It won't fix the bones. But the inflammation, ice and heat. I can help with that, usually. But since you're leaving. Thank you, Todoroki-kun. Todoroki nodded. He placed a hand on Izuku's good shoulder. Don't get used to being a civilian, Midoriya. The class is too quiet without your muttering. It's annoying. Izuku smiled, a real one this time, though it was small. I'll try. Todoroki turned and left. Izuku shouldered his bag. It was heavy. He took one last look at the room, flipped the light switch, and walked out into the hallway. The descent was worse than the ascent. When the elevator opened on the ground floor, the entire class was waiting. Not doing what they were doing before. They were lined up. It was excruciating. Midoriya! Ida stepped forward. He was vibrating with intensity. As class representative, I declare this suspension to be a temporary setback. We will organize a collection of all class notes and lecture recordings. I will personally ensure they are delivered to your mailbox daily. You will not fall behind academically. Thanks, Ida-kun, Izuku said, staring at the floor. Deku Uraraka stepped up. She wiped her eyes. Call us? If you can, I don't think I'm supposed to use my phone for social stuff. Part of the punishment, Izuku lied. He couldn't bear the thought of hearing their voices while he was stuck in his childhood bedroom. It would hurt too much. Oh. Uraraka looked crushed. Okay. Well, we'll be waiting. Take care of yourself, man, Kirishima said, giving him a fist bump on his good hand. Come back harder. Ribitsuya nodded. We'll miss you. Izuku walked through the gauntlet of well-wishes. Every get-well soon felt like a dagger. They were looking at him like a wounded puppy. Like something fragile. He pushed through the front doors, gasping for air as he hit the night. He walked down the path toward the waiting shuttle. But before he could reach it, a shadow detached itself from the side of the building. Nerd. Izuku stopped. He didn't turn around. Kaken. Bakugo walked around to face him. His hands were in his pockets, his posture slouched. The street lamp cast his face in sharp relief. He looked angry. But not the usual explosive anger. This was the quiet, seething anger that was far more dangerous. "You look like trash," Bakugo said. "Thanks," Izuku muttered. "Is that all? You think you're noble, don't you?" Bakugo spat. "Sacrificing your arm again. Saving the day. The hero who suffers." "I don't think I'm noble," Izuku snapped, his own frustration finally bubbling up. "I think I'm weak. I think I panicked. I think I'm the only one in our class who can't do their job without ending up in the hospital." "You're damn right you're weak," Bakugo shouted, stepping into Izuku's space. "But not because of your quirk. You're weak because you don't think you matter." Bakugo poked Izuku hard in the chest. "You think you're just a vessel for All Might's power. You think if you break, it's fine, as long as the power gets passed on or used up. That's why you piss me off." Bakugo grabbed Izuku's collar, dragging him down to eye level. "If you want to beat me, Deku, if you want to be number one, you have to be standing at the end of the fight. A hero who dies saving one train is a hero who can't save the thousands of people waiting for him tomorrow. How can you not get that through your thick skull?" Izuku stared at him. He saw the genuine fear behind Bakugo's rage. The fear of guilt. The fear that one day, Izuku really would die, and Bakugo would be left wondering if he could have stopped it. Bakugo shoved him back. "Get out of here," Bakugo growled, turning his back. "And don't come back until you figure out how to stay alive. It's pathetic watching you." Izuku watched his childhood friend storm back into the dorms. "I know, Kaken," Izuku whispered to the empty air. "I know." He walked to the shuttle. The transfer to Aizawa's car was a blur. Inko had been moved to the passenger seat of Aizawa's black sedan. Her car was being left at UA to be picked up later. She was in no state to drive on the highway. Izuku sat in the back. The car smelled of stale coffee and something like cat dander. It was a utilitarian vehicle, much like its owner. Aizawa started the engine. He didn't turn on the radio. He drove with precise, calculated movements. The city lights blurred past the window. Mizurufu at night was beautiful, a grid of gold and red. Izuku watched the pedestrians walking on the sidewalks. People laughing, eating, living, they were so fragile. Izuku knew that now. He looked at his hand. He had the power to protect them, and the power to break them. "Midoriya," Aizawa said. His voice broke the silence, cutting through the hum of the tires. "Yes, Sensei?" Aizawa caught his eye in the rearview mirror. "Do you know why I didn't expel you?" Izuku swallowed. Because All Might asked you not to." "No," Aizawa said. "All Might has no say in my disciplinary decisions. I expelled an entire class last year. I don't care about tenure or legacy." "Then why?" "Because you have the potential to be the greatest hero this school has ever produced," Aizawa said. Izuku's eyes widened. Inko turned in her seat, surprised. But Aizawa continued, his tone hardening, "Potential is meaningless if it is wasted. Right now you are a glass cannon. You fire once you shatter. And a shattered cannon is just debris on the battlefield. It's an obstacle for the other heroes." Aizawa turned the blinker on, merging onto the expressway. "There is a concept in logistics called the weight of one. In a rescue scenario, if a civilian is injured, it takes 2 people to carry them. If a hero is injured, it takes 3, 2 to carry the hero, and 1 to cover their retreat. When you go down, Midoriya, you don't just remove yourself from the fight. You remove the 2 people who have to save you." Izuku sank lower in his seat. He thought of Death Arms struggling to hold the concrete. If Death Arms had to carry Izuku, the concrete would have fallen. "You become a negative integer," Aizawa said ruthlessly. "You actively subtract from our chance of victory. I can't stand by and watch people get hurt," Izuku said, his voice trembling. "My body just moves." "Then train your mind to move faster than your body," Aizawa countered. "Self-preservation isn't selfishness, Midoriya. It is a tactical requirement. You cannot save the world if you are a martyr. All Might made that mistake. He sacrificed his body until there was nothing left. And now look at us. The world is trembling because the pillar is gone." Aizawa's eyes narrowed in the mirror. "You want to be the next All Might? Don't be. Be better. Be a hero who lasts." The car fell silent again. Izuku looked out the window. Be a hero who lasts. He touched the cold plaster of his cast. He had broken his bones so many times he had lost count. He wore the scars like medals. But Aizawa was right. They weren't medals. They were receipts of his failures. The apartment complex in the quiet suburb looked exactly as he had left it weeks ago. Same bayed bricks. Same flickering streetlight near the entrance. Aizawa pulled up to the curb. I will be in touch regarding your academic materials. You are to stay within the neighborhood. No vigilantism. No court usage. If I hear you so much as activated full calling to open a pickle jar, you're expelled. Understood? Yes, sir, Izuku said. Take care, Mrs. Midoriya. Aizawa nodded to Inko. Thank you, Eraserhead-san, Inko said, wiping her eyes. Thank you for bringing him home. They got out of the car. Izuku shouldered his heavy bag with his good shoulder. He watched Aizawa drive away, the taillights fading into the darkness. Come on, Izuku, Inko said softly. Let's go inside. They walked up the stairs to the second floor. The metal walkway clanged under their feet. It was a familiar sound, the soundtrack of his childhood. Inko unlocked the door. The smell of the apartment hit him instantly. Miso soup. Laundry detergent. Home. It was smaller than the dorms. Cluttered. Cozy. I made katsudon, Inko said nervously, bustling toward the kitchen. I started it before the call. I can reheat it. Mom, you don't have to. I want to. She insisted, turning to him. Her face was desperate. She needed to do something. She couldn't fix his arm, she couldn't fix his career, but she could feed him. Please, Izuku. Sit down. Izuku sat at the small kotatsu table. He looked around. The living room was exactly the same. The TV where he had watched All Might's debut video 1,000 times. The rug where he had played as a toddler, waiting for a quirk that never came. Inko placed a steaming bowl in front of him. It looked delicious, but when Izuku took a bite, it tasted like ash. Is it okay? Inko asked, hovering. It's great, Mom, Izuku lied. They ate in silence. The clock on the wall ticked. Tick. 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 It was deafening. I'm sorry, Mom, Izuku said suddenly. Inko froze. Izuku, I'm sorry I make you worry. I'm sorry I'm not safe. Inko put down her chopsticks. She walked around the table and hugged him. It was a fierce, trembling hug. She was careful of his arm, wrapping her arms around his head and good shoulder. I just want you to live, she sobbed into his hair. I'm so proud of you. You're a hero. But you're my baby. I don't care if you're number one. I just want you to be here. Izuku closed his eyes and leaned into her warmth. I know. Later, alone in his room, the silence was total. He had unpacked his bag. The clothes were in the drawer. The notebooks were on the desk. He sat on his bed, surrounded by the All Might posters. I am here! The posters screamed. But I'm not, Izuku whispered to the darkness. I'm here. He looked at his phone. The Class 1A group chat was blowing up. Kaminari, man, it's so quiet here. Mina, we should sneak out and visit him. Ida, absolutely not. That would violate the terms of his suspension. Uraraka, I hope he's eating. Izuku watched the messages scroll by. He wanted to type. He wanted to say, I'm okay. I'm here, but he didn't. He turned the phone off and placed it on the nightstand. He lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The street lamp outside cast the shadow of the window bars across his blanket. It looked like a cage. For the first time in his life, Izuku Midoriya didn't feel like a protagonist in a hero's journey. He felt like a kid who had been sent to his room for breaking a toy. Only the toy was himself. He closed his eyes, but sleep was a long way off. He had 30 days of this. 720 hours to think about every mistake he had ever made. The silence pressed in. And in the silence, Izuku began to think. Not about smashes or shoot styles. But about the man in the mirror, and whether there was anything left of him if you took the hero away. The biological clock is a cruel tyrant. At 5 a.m., the sky outside the window was the color of a bruised plum, hovering somewhere between night and dawn. The streetlights of the quiet Muzudifo suburb were still humming, casting long, static shadows across the pavement. Inside the room, Izuku Midoriya's eyes snapped open. There was no alarm clock. There didn't need to be. For the past year, his body had been rewired, programmed with military precision to wake at this exact second. His cortisol levels spiked, his heart rate elevated, and his muscles tensed in anticipation of the morning run. 5 a.m. 5 kilometers. Interval training. Grip strength. Breakfast. Class. Izuku sat up, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. The motion was fluid, automatic. He reached for the floor with his feet, his mind already calculating the temperature, cool, and the humidity, high, to adjust his breathing rhythm for the jog. He stood up. He took a step toward the closet to grab his tracksuit. Then, the weight on his chest swung forward, throwing him off balance. The heavy plaster cast, encasing his right arm and strapped across his torso, acted as a grim anchor. A sharp bolt of pain shot up from his radius, a hot, jagged reminder of reality. Izuku froze in the middle of his room. He wasn't in the Heights Alliance dorms. He wasn't about to meet Ida and Todoroki in the common room. He wasn't a hero in training. He was in his childhood bedroom. The All Might clock on the wall tick-tocked loudly in the silence. The posters stared at him, suspended. Izuku sank back down onto the mattress. The adrenaline that had woken him up had nowhere to go. It soured in his veins, turning into a jittery, anxious energy. His hands, his left hand, shook slightly. Right, he whispered to the empty room. I'm resting. He looked at his running shoes by the door. They looked like they belonged to someone else. He tried to lay back down. He pulled the covers up to his chin. He stared at the ceiling. 5:05 a.m., 5:06 a.m., 5:07 a.m. He couldn't do it. His body was screaming for movement. The one for all energy, usually cycling at a low hum beneath his skin, felt stagnant. It felt like an engine idling too high in a garage with the doors closed, filling the space with exhaust. He got up again. He paced the small room. 4 steps to the window. 4 steps to the door. 4 steps to the desk. He felt like a caged animal. A very small, very broken animal. He sat at his desk and turned on the lamp. The yellow light illuminated the stack of textbooks Ida had promised to send, and had arrived via express courier yesterday evening, true to his word. If I can't train my body, I'll train my mind. He opened a math textbook. Calculus. Integration by parts. He stared at the symbols. They swam on the page. Usually Izuku was a good student. He enjoyed the logic of math. But today, the integrals looked like the twisted metal of the monorail track. The variables looked like people falling. He slammed the book shut. Stop it, he muttered, clutching his hair with his left hand. Just stop thinking. But stopping his thoughts was harder than stopping a train. By 7 a.m., the smell of miso soup and grilled fish wafted under his door. Izuku emerged from his room, dressed in an old t-shirt that read t-shirt in English, a relic of his middle school fashion sense, and loose sweatpants. He felt sloppy. Unarmored. Inko Midoriya was in the kitchen. She moved with a nervous, fluttering energy, chopping scallions with a precision that betrayed her anxiety. When she saw him, her face lit up, but her eyes remained guarded. Izuku! You're up early, she said, wiping her hands on her apron. Did you sleep well? Is the arm hurting? I have the painkillers right here. Do you need water? I'm okay, Mom, Izuku said, trying to summon a smile. It felt heavy on his face. I slept enough. Sit. I made a big breakfast. You need the calcium. For the bones. She ushered him to the small table. The spread was enough for 3 people. Rice, soup, fish, tamagoyaki, natto, pickles. It was a feast of comfort food. Izuku sat down. The kotatsu was warm. It was cozy. It was suffocating. Thanks, Mom, he said, picking up his chopsticks with his left hand. He had practiced being ambidextrous for combat versatility, so eating wasn't an issue, but it still felt clumsy. Inko sat opposite him, watching him eat. She didn't eat much herself. She just watched. Every time he winced, even slightly, shifting the weight of the cast, she flinched too. So, she started, her voice overly bright. What are your plans for today? Maybe we could watch a movie. Or I could dig out those old puzzles you used to like? I have to study, Izuku said, staring at his rice. Ida sent the coursework. I can't fall behind. Oh. Of course. She deflated a little. But don't push yourself, honey. You're on break. You need to rest. It's not a break, Mom. It's a suspension, Izuku corrected gently. If I slack off now, when I get back, the gap between me and everyone else will be insurmountable. Inko's grip on her teacup tightened. Does it always have to be a race, Izuku? It's not a race, he said, though he knew that wasn't entirely true. It's survival. If I'm not strong enough, people get hurt. Like yesterday. You got hurt yesterday, Inko whispered. I'm fine. You have a metal pin in your arm, Izuku. I'm healing. The silence that followed was thick. The air in the apartment felt different than the air at UA. At school, the air was charged with ambition. Here, it was heavy with worry. It was a cotton wool blanket, soft and stifling, designed to keep him safe and stationary. I'm going to do the dishes, Inko said abruptly, standing up. I can help. No! She held up a hand. You sit. Rest your arm. Please. Izuku sat. He listened to the clinking of china and the rush of water. He felt useless. At the dorms, everyone pulled their weight. Here, he was being treated like an invalid. He looked at his phone sitting on the table. The screen was dark. He had turned off notifications, but the urge to check it was a physical itch. A withdrawal symptom. He tapped the screen. 74 unread messages from Class 1A, Hell's Cape. Izuku read the messages, a lump forming in his throat. They were moving on. The world was turning. They were going to class training, living the life he had fought so hard to enter. He felt like a ghost haunting his own life. He started to type a reply. Thanks guys, He deleted it. What could he say? I'm sitting at my kitchen table trying not to scream? I feel like a failure? He put the phone down, screen down. Mom, he called out. I'm going to go study in my room. Okay, sweetie. Let me know if you need snacks. Izuku fled to his room, closing the door behind him. He leaned against the wood, sliding down until he hit the floor. He gripped his left hand into a fist, squeezing until the knuckles turned white. 1 month. 29 days, 18 hours left. The days began to bleed together. Day 3 was the hardest so far. The initial shock had worn off, leaving behind a dull, aching boredom and a heightened sense of anxiety. Izuku was sitting on the living room rug, surrounded by old notebooks. He wasn't allowed to train, but he needed to do something. He decided to reorganize his hero analysis notes, looking for patterns he might have missed. The TV was on low volume in the background. A daytime talk show was discussing skincare routines. It was mind-numbing. Then, the breaking news bumper flashed on the screen. Izuku's head snapped up. His eyes narrowed, his breath hitching. We interrupt this program for a live report from Shibuya, the anchor said. Villain attack in progress. The footage switched to a helicopter view. Smoke was billowing from a shopping district. A villain with some sort of slime generation quirk was holding traffic hostage. Izuku leaned forward, his analytical brain engaging instantly. Slime type. Viscosity seems high. It's slowing down the police cruisers. Fire quirks would be bad. Fumes could be toxic. They need ice or containment foam. Who is on patrol in Shibuya? Best Jeanist is on hiatus. Maybe Kamui Woods? He started muttering. The familiar, rapid-fire mumble poured out of him. If the slime is conductive, Kaminari would be a bad match. But if it's insulation-based, he's useless anyway. They need to target the emitter source. Looks like it's coming from the palms. He reached for a notebook, scribbling furiously with his left hand. The scratch of the pen was frantic. Izuku? Inko was standing in the doorway holding a basket of laundry. She was looking at him with wide, frightened eyes. Izuku didn't hear her. He was in the zone. The blast radius is increasing. If they don't evacuate the subway entrance in Sector 4, the civilian casualties will. Click. The TV went black. Izuku blinked, snapping out of his trance. He looked up. Inko was holding the remote, her hand trembling. Mom? Stop it, she said, her voice tight. I was just analyzing. I need to keep my mind sharp. You were shaking, Inko said. She put the laundry basket down and walked over to him. She knelt on the rug. Izuku, look at yourself. You were sweating. You were shaking. Izuku touched his forehead. It was damp. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He hadn't even realized. It's what I do, Izuku defended weakly. I have to be ready. You are suspended, Inko said firmly. You are supposed to be resting. Watching people get hurt on television isn't resting. It's torturing yourself. I can't just ignore it. Izuku's voice rose, frustration bubbling over. Bad things are happening out there. People are in danger. Just because I'm stuck here doesn't mean the world stops needing saving, and you can't save them from this living room. Inko snapped back. It was the first time she had raised her voice in years. Izuku recoiled. Inko covered her mouth, her eyes tearing up immediately. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to yell. I can't stand watching you tear yourself apart over things you can't control. I could control it, Izuku whispered, looking at his cast. If I was better. If I was stronger. Izuku, I'm going for a walk, he said abruptly. He needed air. The apartment was shrinking. Izuku, your arm. I'm just walking, Mom. I'm allowed to walk. He grabbed his sneakers and jammed his feet into them, storming out of the apartment before she could say another word. The neighborhood was painfully normal. Izuku walked with his head down, the hood of his sweatshirt pulled up. He didn't want to be recognized. Hey, aren't you that kid who blew up the bank? Aren't you the UA student who got suspended? He kept his pace brisk, a power walk that bordered on a jog. He needed to burn the energy. He walked past the park. Children were playing on the swings. A little boy with sprouting wings was chasing a girl who could turn her skin blue. They were laughing. They were using their quirks freely, joyfully. Izuku clutched his right arm. Why can't I be like that? Why does my power always have to break things? He remembered Aizawa's words. If you cannot save yourself, you are just a liability. He walked until his legs burned. He ended up in a commercial district a few miles away. He stood outside a hero merchandise store. In the window, there was a display of All Might figures. But next to them were the new generation. Endeavor. Hawks. Best Jeanist. And student merchandise. There was a small section for the sports festival stars. A poster of Todoroki. A poster of Bakugo. There was no poster of Deku. It made sense. He hadn't won. He was the kid who broke his fingers. He was the chaotic element. Excuse me, a voice said. Izuku jumped, turning around. A middle-aged man was standing there, holding a shopping bag. He was squinting at Izuku. You look familiar, the man said. Izuku pulled his hood down further. I just have one of those faces. No, wait, the man pointed a finger. You're the kid from the news. The one who saved the train. Izuku froze. He waited for the anger. He waited for the man to yell about the broken glass, the damaged buildings. My niece was on that train, the man said. Izuku blinked. Oh, the man stepped forward and bowed low. Thank you? She came home crying, shaking, but she came home. If that train had fallen, thank you. Izuku felt a strange sensation in his chest. It wasn't the swelling pride of heroism. It was relief, mixed with a sharp pang of guilt. I caused a lot of damage, Izuku mumbled. I hurt people on the ground. The man straightened up. He looked at Izuku's cast. Yeah. The news said it was messy. But hey, in the moment? You made a choice. You saved my niece. To me, that makes you a hero. The man smiled and walked away. Izuku stood on the sidewalk, trembling. A hero. But was he? If he was a hero, why was he here, hiding in a hoodie, banned from the school that made heroes? The man's gratitude didn't fix the doubt. It just complicated it. It validated the reckless side of him, the side that said the ends justify the means. But Aizawa had suspended him precisely to kill that line of thinking. Izuku felt a vibration in his pocket. He pulled out his phone. It was All Might. All Might, text young Midoriya. I am bringing groceries to your mother this evening. I hope to see you. Izuku stared at the screen. All Might was coming. The man he had let down. He turned around and started the long walk home. Dinner that night was a battlefield of silence. All Might, in his skeletal, small mite form, sat at the kotatsu. He looked too big for the small room, his limbs long and awkward. He had brought a box of premium melons as an apology gift. Inko was serving stew. She was polite, but there was a frosty edge to her demeanor toward the former number one hero. She blamed him, partially. Izuku knew she did. She blamed him for giving Izuku a dream that was too big for his body. So, All Might coughed, breaking the silence. How are you holding up, young Midoriya? I'm fine, Izuku said automatically. He was getting good at lying. He is restless, Inko corrected, pouring tea. He tries to train when he thinks I'm not looking. He watches the news and hyperventilates. Mom! Izuku blushed. All Might sighed. He looked at Izuku with those deep, shadowed eyes. It is withdrawal, my boy. You are addicted to the adrenaline. To the crusade. I just want to be useful, Izuku said, gripping his chopsticks. Sitting here, it feels like I'm letting everyone down. Shigaraki is out there. The League is planning something. And I'm eating stew. The world does not rest on your shoulders alone, All Might said gently. That was my mistake. I made the world believe that one pillar could hold up the sky. But when that pillar cracks, the sky falls. You have classmates. You have teachers. You have pro-heroes. But I have one for all. Izuku blurted out. It's my responsibility. It is your quirk, Inko said sharply. Not your death sentence. Both men looked at her. Inko set the teapot down with a clack. I have stayed quiet for a long time, Inko said, her voice trembling. I supported you going to UA. I supported the dorms. I signed the papers. She looked at All Might. I know you care about him, Yagi-san. I know you love him like a son. But you are teaching him how to be a symbol. I need him to be a human being. She turned to Izuku. Her eyes were swimming with tears, but her gaze was steady. Izuku, do you know what I thought when I saw you on the news yesterday? When I saw that explosion? You were worried, Izuku said quietly. I was angry, she confessed. Izuku blinked. Angry? I was angry at you, she sobbed. I was angry that you threw yourself away again. I was angry that you didn't think about me. About how I would feel if I had to bury you. She covered her face with her hands. I love you, Izuku. You are my everything. But sometimes I catch myself wishing you were still quirkless. The room went completely still. The only sound was the humming of the refrigerator. Izuku felt like he had been punched in the gut. Harder than All Might, harder than muscular. Mom, I know it's selfish. Inko cried, looking up, tears streaming down her face. I know being a hero is your dream. I know you were sad when you were little. But at least when you were quirkless, you were safe. At least I knew you would come home for dinner. Now every time you walk out the door, I feel like I'm saying goodbye forever. Izuku stared at his mother. He looked at the woman who had raised him alone. Who had gained weight from stress, whose hair was graying early from worry. He saw the toll his dream had taken on her. He looked at All Might. The hero looked ashamed. He was looking at the floor, unable to face the mother's grief. Izuku realized then that his suspension wasn't just about him. It wasn't just about his bones. It was about the blast radius of his self-destruction. He stood up. He walked around the table. He knelt beside his mother, and wrapped his good arm around her. She buried her face in his shoulder, sobbing uncontrollably. I'm sorry, Izuku whispered. I'm so sorry. I don't want you to stop being a hero, Inko wept. I just want you to stop dying. I know, Izuku said. Tears leaking from his own eyes. I promise, Mom. I'm going to learn. That's why I'm here. I'm going to learn how to come home. He looked at All Might over Inko's shoulder. All Might nodded slowly. It was a silent agreement. No more breaking. Later that night, after All Might had left, and Inko had gone to bed exhausted from crying, Izuku sat on his balcony. The air was cold. The city lights twinkled in the distance. He looked at his cast. He thought about the man who thanked him. He thought about his mother's wish. The two things felt incompatible. To save the man's niece, he had to break his arm. To save his mother's heart, he had to keep his arm whole. How do I do both? He pulled out his notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13. He flipped to the page on his own quirk. Shoot style. Full cowling. 20% limit. Black whip unstable. He picked up a pen. Underneath the drawing of his costume, he wrote a new header, The Cost of Victory. He began to write. Not about power output or speed, but about efficiency. About minimizing risk. About the fact that his body was a finite resource. If I use 100%, I win the fight, but I lose the war because I can't fight the next day. Aizawa-sensei was right. I am a negative integer. He looked at the stars. He felt the withdrawal symptoms kicking in again, the itch to run, to jump, to smash. But this time, he fought it down. He forced his breathing to slow. He closed the notebook. 1 month, he whispered to the night. He wasn't going to waste it. He wasn't going to spend it sulking, or trying to sneak in push-ups. He was going to spend it figuring out who Izuku Midoriya was when he wasn't breaking himself into pieces. He went back inside and locked the balcony door. For the first night in years, he didn't dream of All Might. He dreamed of his mother smiling, and himself, standing tall, whole, and unbroken beside her. The walls of the apartment were closing in. It was day 5 of the suspension. To Izuku Midoriya, it felt like year 5. He sat at his desk, the tip of his pen hovering over a calculus problem that he had solved 3 times already just to make sure the answer hadn't changed. It hadn't. The integral of x squared was still x cubed over 3. The logic of the universe remained intact. But the logic of Izuku Midoriya was fraying. He looked at the clock. 2:14 p.m. Usually, at this time, he would be in foundational heroics. He would be sweating. He would be dodging Bakugo's explosions, or trying to match Ida's speed, or analyzing the complex geometric creation of Yaoyorozu. He would be alive. Here, in the stillness of his childhood room, the silence was a physical weight. He could hear the refrigerator compressor humming in the kitchen. He could hear a dog barking 3 streets away. He could hear the blood rushing in his ears, a constant whoosh-whoosh that sounded mockingly like the roar of a crowd he was no longer allowed to protect. His right arm, encased in the heavy plaster cast, throbbed with a dull, rhythmic ache. It was an itch deep inside the bone, right where the metal pins were holding his radius together. It was the itch of healing, or perhaps the itch of atrophy. I can't do this, Izuku whispered. He stood up so fast his chair screeched against the floorboards. He grabbed his phone. No new messages. The class was in training. They were busy becoming heroes while he was busy becoming a furniture fixture. He walked to the living room. Inko was at work, a half-day shift she had reluctantly taken after Izuku promised he wouldn't burn the apartment down. The space was empty. He needed to move. Aizawa had said no training. No quirk usage. But he hadn't said no movement. If Izuku didn't burn off the excess energy, the one-for-all stockpile that sizzled beneath his skin like carbonated water, he felt he might vibrate through the floor. Jogging, Izuku said aloud, justifying it to the empty room. Jogging is allowed. It's cardiovascular health. It's maintenance. He went to his room and changed. He put on a nondescript gray tracksuit, avoiding the UA blue. He pulled on his red sneakers, the only part of his hero identity he couldn't bear to leave behind. He grabbed a baseball cap, pulling the brim low. He locked the door behind him and stepped out into the afternoon sun. The air tasted different when you weren't rushing through it at 50 miles per hour. It tasted of exhaust fumes, yakitori from a street stall, and dust. Izuku started at a brisk walk, clutching his cast against his chest to keep it from jostling. Once he hit the riverbank path, he transitioned into a light jog. Left, right. He focused on his breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. He tried to empty his mind. He tried to be just a boy running. But habits, forged in the fires of danger, were hard to break. As he ran, his eyes scanned the environment automatically. Construction site on the left. Unsecured scaffolding, potential hazard. Car moving erratically in the slow lane. Driver on phone? No, eating lunch. 2 men arguing near the vending machine. Body language aggressive, but not violent yet. He wasn't running. He was patrolling. He shook his head, trying to dislodge the analysis. Stop it. You're a civilian. Just a civilian. He turned away from the river, heading into the denser urban district of Muzurifu. The crowds were thicker here. Shoppers, businessmen, students from other schools. They moved in a chaotic flow that Izuku usually navigated with full cowling. Now, he had to weave, dodge, and apologize. Sorry. Excuse me. Sorry. He bumped into a salaryman who glared at him. Izuku shrank back, muttering an apology. I'm so slow, he thought. Without the lightning, I'm just traffic. Then, the sound cut through the noise of the city. Whoa 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 whoa. Sirens. Close. Izuku froze. The hair on the back of his neck stood up. It was a conditioned response. Siren means danger. Danger means people need help. People needing help means go. His feet moved before his brain gave permission. He pivoted, sprinting toward the sound. Wait. No. His rational mind screamed. Aizawa said no, I won't fight, he bargained with himself as he ran. I'll just see if everyone is okay. Situational awareness. That's not a crime. He followed the sirens 2 blocks east, toward the commercial shopping district. The smell of smoke hit him first, acrid chemical smoke. He rounded the corner and skidded to a halt. A crowd had already gathered. A thick wall of people, phones raised, necks craned. And beyond them, the flashing red and blue lights of police cruisers and the bright yellow tape that marked the boundary between the safe world and the war zone. Izuku pushed his way to the front, careful of his arm. Excuse me, let me through, I need to. You need to what? A voice in his head sneered. You're nobody right now. He reached the police tape. He gripped it with his left hand, his knuckles white. Down the street, about 50 meters away, a battle was raging. The villain was a giant type, not as big as Empty Lady, maybe 12 feet tall, but he was covered in metallic spikes that shot out from his body like porcupine quills. He was roaring, swinging a massive, spiked fist at a building. Get back! Stay back! A police officer yelled, pushing the crowd away. Izuku ducked under the officer's arm, peering through the gap. 2 heroes were on the scene. Izuku recognized them instantly. Glimmer, a newer hero, ranked in the lower 200s. Quirk, Photon Blast. He could shoot concussive light beams from his chest. Heavyweight, a veteran sidekick to the Death Arms Agency. Quirk, Density Control. He could make himself immovable. You're not getting past me. Heavyweight shouted, planting his feet. The pavement cracked under his increased mass. The villain roared and swung a fist. Clang. It hit Heavyweight's crossed arms. The hero didn't budge, but the shockwave blew out the windows of the cafe next to them. Glimmer, now! Heavyweight yelled. Glimmer leaped into the air, hovering with support gear thrusters. Photon cannon! A beam of brilliant yellow light erupted from his chest. It struck the villain squarely in the shoulder. It was a flashy, powerful hit. The crowd around Izuku cheered. Yeah! Get him! But Izuku didn't cheer. His eyes narrowed. The angle is wrong, Izuku thought, his mouth moving silently. He's shooting downward at a 45-degree angle. The beam is going to refract off the villain's metallic spikes. The light beam hit the spikes and scattered. Instead of piercing the villain, bolts of searing energy ricocheted in every direction. One bolt sliced through a traffic light, sending it crashing onto a parked car. Another bolt tore through the awning of a flower shop, setting the canvas on fire. A third bolt struck the side of an office building, blasting a crater in the masonry. Debris rained down on the street below. The crowd's cheer died instantly. A woman near Izuku screamed as a chunk of concrete smashed onto the sidewalk 10 feet away. Watch it! Someone yelled. You're destroying the street. Izuku flinched. He watched the debris fall. He saw the flower shop owner run out with a fire extinguisher, frantically trying to save his storefront, while the battle raged 10 yards away. They're not looking, Izuku realized, his stomach churning. Glimmer is focused on the target. He's not looking at the refraction. Eat this! Glimmer shouted, charging up another shot. No, don't! Izuku yelled. Nobody heard him. The blast fired. More refraction. More destruction. A street lamp exploded. The villain stumbled back, blinded, and crashed into the front of a bookstore. The glass facade shattered inward. Thousands of books were instantly crushed under the villain's bulk. Got him! Glimmer celebrated, landing in a pose. Heavyweight moved in to secure the dazed villain. The fight was over. It had taken less than 3 minutes. The crowd erupted into applause again. Phones snapped photos. Did you see that beam? Awesome! That was so cool. But Izuku wasn't looking at the heroes. He was looking at the bookstore. An elderly man was standing in the shattered remains of the entrance, holding a torn book, looking at the devastation of his livelihood with a hollow, shell-shocked expression. He looked at the flower shop owner, who was coughing in the smoke, his awning ruined. He looked at the crushed car. Victory, Izuku thought. But at what cost? Hell of a show, isn't it? The voice was gravelly, dry, and laced with a bitterness that cut through the cheers. Izuku turned. Standing next to him, leaning against the mailbox, was a man. He looked to be in his late 50s. He wore a faded, oil-stained mechanic's jumpsuit and a flat cap. He was smoking a cigarette, watching the heroes pose for the cameras with a look of utter disdain. Excuse me? Izuku stammered. The man took a drag of his cigarette and pointed a callous finger at Glimmer. I said, it's a hell of a show. Flashy lights. Big noises. Great for the ratings. Terrible for the insurance premiums. They stopped the villain, Izuku said, his instinct to defend heroes kicking in automatically. No one got hurt. Physically? Maybe not, the man grunted. He gestured to the bookstore owner. Ask old man Tanaka if he's hurt. That shop has been there for 40 years. Insurance won't cover hero negligence unless you sue, and good luck suing a hero agency with a top-tier legal team. He's out of business for 6 months minimum. Izuku looked back at Mr. Tanaka. The old man was slumped against the doorframe, but the villain would have done worse, Izuku argued, though his voice lacked conviction. Would he? The man raised an eyebrow. The villain was trying to rob the jewelry store down the block. He was moving away from the bookstore. Heavyweight blocked him, pinned him here, in the narrowest part of the street. Then Flashlight Boy up there decided to turn a precision job into a fireworks display. The man spat on the ground. They didn't contain the threat. They escalated it. But hey, look at them waving. They'll be on the evening news, and Tanaka will be filling out bankruptcy forms. Izuku stared at the man. The analysis was brutal. It was cynical, and it was exactly what Aizawa had said. Collateral damage isn't just numbers. It's people's lives. You analyze them too, don't you? The man asked, his eyes suddenly sharp, locking onto Izuku. Izuku stiffened. I saw you. Before the light show. You were muttering. Angle is wrong. Refraction. You saw it coming before the trigger was pulled. The man stepped closer. He smelled of engine oil and cheap tobacco. He looked at Izuku's face, then down at the heavy cast on his right arm. His eyes widened slightly. A flicker of recognition. Wait a minute, the man chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. Green hair. Broken arm. Nervous twitch. He leaned in. You're the kid from the bank explosion. The one who turned a B-rank villain bust into a demolition derby. Izuku felt the blood drain from his face. He pulled his cap down, turning away. I have to go. Running away? The man called out. Just like a hero. Make a mess, then leave before the dust settles. Izuku stopped. The words stung more than the broken bones. He turned back, his left hand clenched into a fist. I didn't run away, Izuku said, his voice trembling but firm. I stayed. And I'm suspended because of it. I know I messed up. The man looked at him, surprised by the honesty. He stubbed out his cigarette on the sole of his boot. Suspended, huh? You actually grew a spine? The man sighed. He patted the space on the bench next to the mailbox. Sit down, kid. My knees are killing me. I should go. Sit down, the man commanded. It wasn't a request. It had the tone of someone used to giving orders. Izuku hesitated, then sat. He sat on the edge, ready to bolt. Name's Daigo, the man said. Midoriya, Izuku replied softly. So, Midoriya. You blew up a bank. I saved a train, Izuku corrected. Right. The train. Daigo nodded. Classic trolley problem. Save the many, doom the few. Or in your case, save the train, doom the city block. Hero math. I didn't have a choice, Izuku said, the familiar defense rising. He was going to drop it. I had to use 100%. There's always a choice, Daigo said. You just didn't like the other options because they weren't flashy. That's not true. I don't care about being flashy, don't you? Daigo pointed at the heroes down the street. Glimmer was signing an autograph. That's the industry, kid. That's the water you swim in. The bigger the smash, the higher the ranking. The higher the ranking, the more merchandise you sell. We built a system that rewards destruction as long as you smile while doing it. Izuku looked at Daigo. Under the grease and the wrinkles, there was a sharpness to his jaw, a set to his shoulders. You used to be a hero, didn't you? Izuku asked. Daigo snorted. Sharp eye. Yeah. A long time ago. Before the ranking system turned everything into a popularity contest. Who were you? Doesn't matter. I wasn't a big shot. I was a sidekick. Logistics and support. My quirk is dampen. I can reduce the vibration of objects I touch. Good for stabilizing buildings. Good for stealth. He looked at his hands stained with oil. I quit 10 years ago. Why? Daigo gestured to the street. Because of this. We had a hostage situation. Villain in a warehouse. My team, me and a top 50 hero who shall remain nameless, went in. My job was to weaken the floor so the villain would fall into the basement. Safe containment. Clean. Quiet. Daigo's face darkened. But the hero didn't want quiet. He wanted the capture. He blasted through the front wall. The shockwave. It triggered the villain's explosives. Izuku held his breath. We got the villain, Daigo said hollowly. But the warehouse collapse took out the family living next door. The hero got a commendation for capturing a dangerous bomber. I got to help dig the bodies out of the rubble. Izuku felt sick. The image of the warehouse superimposed itself over the image of the bank, over the image of the train. That's horrible. That's the job, Daigo said. Or at least, that's what the job has become. We treat the city like a stage. And we forget that the audience is actually living there. Daigo turned to Izuku. I watched your video, kid. You have power. Scary power. Like All Might. All Might is the greatest hero, Izuku whispered. All Might is a singularity, Daigo corrected. He was so strong he could end fights with wind pressure alone. He made us lazy. We thought, if we just hit hard enough, everything will be fine. But you ain't All Might. You're a kid who breaks his own bones. Daigo poked Izuku's cast. A hero who hurts himself to save others is romantic. It sells comic books. But a hero who hurts the people he's saving? That's just a villain with a badge. Izuku stared at the police tape fluttering in the wind. A villain with a badge. I don't want to hurt anyone, Izuku said, his voice thick with emotion. I just want to save everyone. Like All Might does. Then stop trying to be All Might, Daigo said. All Might is a hammer. To a hammer, everything looks like a nail. If you want to save everyone, the train and the people on the street, the victim and the shopkeeper, you can't be a hammer. You have to be a scalpel. Daigo stood up, groaning as his knees popped. You're suspended, right? Good. Best thing for you. Why? Because it forces you to stand here, Daigo gestured to the sidewalk. Behind the tape. With the rest of us. You need to see what it feels like when the debris rains down. You need to see the fear in people's eyes when a hero winds up for a big punch. Daigo adjusted his cap. Learn to look at the world from down here, Midoriya. If you can understand the view from the sidelines, maybe, just maybe, when you get back up there, you won't step on us. Daigo turned and started walking away, melting into the crowd. Wait! Izuku called out. What was your hero name? Daigo paused. He didn't look back. Silence, he said. My name was Silence. And then he was gone. Izuku sat on the bench for a long time. The police were clearing the scene. A cleanup crew had arrived, not heroes, just guys in orange vests with brooms and trucks. They were sweeping up the glass of the bookstore. Izuku watched them. He watched Mr. Tanaka sweeping alongside them, tears streaming down his face as he threw wet, ruined books into a trash bag. Izuku felt a pull in his chest. He wanted to go help. He wanted to use his good arm to lift the heavy beams. He wanted to bow and apologize on behalf of Glimmer, but he couldn't. He was a civilian. And civilians stayed behind the tape. He pulled out his phone. He opened his notes app. He scrolled past his analysis of super moves and power output. He opened a new page. He typed the header, perspective, the civilian cost. He began to type. Observation. Glimmer's attack was effective against the villain, but disastrous for the environment. Reason, tunnel vision. He focused on the target, not the background. Correction, before attacking, identify the backstop. Where does the energy go if I miss? Where does it go if I hit? Daigo's lesson, power without precision is negligence. A 100% smash saves the target but destroys the context. People live in the context. Izuku looked up at the broken street one last time. He realized he had always analyzed fights like a fighting game. Player 1 versus Player 2. Health bars. Victory conditions. He had forgotten that the stage wasn't just pixels. It was people's lives. I have to be a scalpel, he thought. Not a hammer. He stood up. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the broken glass. It glittered like diamonds, beautiful and dangerous. Izuku turned and began the jog home. The run back was different. He didn't run with the frantic, desperate energy of before. He ran with a rhythm. A cadence. He passed the construction site again. Loose scaffolding. This time, he didn't just note it. He stopped. He looked around. No heroes. No police. Just him. He couldn't use his quirk. But he had a left hand. He walked over to the scaffolding. He found a loose clamp that was rattling in the wind. He reached up, standing on his toes, and tightened the screw with his fingers until his knuckles ached. It wasn't a smash. It wasn't a flashy save. No one saw him do it. There was no applause, but the scaffolding stopped rattling. It was safe. Izuku smiled. A small, private smile. He continued his run. When he got back to the apartment, it was dark. Inko was home. She was sitting at the table, looking anxious. When Izuku walked in, sweaty and smelling of the city, she jumped up. Izuku! You've been gone for hours. I was about to call Mitsuki to see if I'm okay, Mom, Izuku said. He sounded calmer than he had in days. He took off his shoes and lined them up neatly. I just went for a run. And I watched a fight. Inko stiffened. Izuku, I stayed behind the tape, he assured her. I just watched. I talked to someone. He walked into the kitchen and poured a glass of water. He drank it in one long gulp. Mom? Yes? I think Nizu was right. Inko looked at him, surprised. You do? Yeah. Izuku looked at his cast. I've been looking at everything from above. From the perspective of how do I win? Today. I saw what it looks like from below. From what happens when I lose. He walked over and hugged her. It was awkward with the cast, but he squeezed her tight. I'm going to figure this out, he said. I'm not going to be the hero who breaks things anymore. I'm going to be the hero who fixes them. Inko hugged him back, burying her face in his chest. I know you will, Izuku. I know. That night, Izuku didn't stare at the ceiling. He sat at his desk. He pushed the calculus textbook aside. He opened Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13. He flipped to the page titled Shoot Style. He picked up a red pen. He drew a big X over the phrase maximum power. Next to it, he wrote, maximum control. He started sketching. Not a new move, but a new way of moving. Keeping low. Using the environment to dampen shockwaves. Using Black Whip not just to grab, but to catch debris. If I can't use 100% without breaking, I have to make 20% feel like 100% through application. He worked until his eyes burned. For the first time since the suspension began, the itch in his bones subsided. The anxiety of being left behind faded, because he wasn't behind anymore. He was just looking at the problem from a different angle, and from down here, on the sidelines, he could see the cracks in the foundation that he was going to have to fix. Izuku Midoriya turned the page, and kept writing.